Hey everybody, it's Tyler Austin from Midgard Strength and Conditioning. Thank you so much for watching. In this video, I'm going to be doing a Q&A where I answer some of the many questions that you guys sent in. Thank you to everyone who sent me questions, and my apologies if I do not get to your question. However, I do plan on doing more of these in the future. So with that being said, let's go ahead and just dive right on into it. So the first question I got was from Steven, and Steven asks, one challenge that I face when life gets extremely busy, whether work, family, or other, sometimes it's not possible to keep up the workout routine. For me, I find it difficult to, as things slack up, to get back into it. I know I need to, I can feel it in my body, but the tug of other things to fill that previously allocated time is tough. Are there any strategies, tips, tricks for getting back into the routine other than just raw self-discipline? All right, Stephen. Well, that's a fantastic question. Thank you so much for sending that to me. It's a rather deep question in terms of there are many different fronts in which we can discuss that on. Can be certainly a long question to answer. I'll approach this a few different ways. It's kind of hard for me to go specifically into your situation simply because I just don't have a lot of information other than what you sent me here in regards to your specific situation. But there's some things I can maybe dive into just on like how you word this. The first way I would approach this is just through a practical programming aspect, primarily in terms of scheduling and training frequency, mainly weekly frequency, how many times per week that you're training. Because you say, when you get busy, it's not possible for you to maintain your workout routine. So the first question I would probably pose to you is, are you over optimistic with the amount of training time and the amount of training days that you are trying to train? Primarily, how many times per week you're trying to train. So you might be over optimistic on how many week or how many days you have or how much time you have to train, when in reality you don't have that much time to dedicate to training or are willing to dedicate to training. As a coach, I have dealt with and I deal with people who tend to be over optimistic with how much time they have or are willing to dedicate to training. I have people and have had people who say, I can train, 4 times per week. I want to train 4 times per week. But in reality, they don't have that much time to train, or they don't have, or are not willing to dedicate that much time to train. They will say they do, but in reality, they don't. They might only be able to train twice per week. And, that might be, what you're dealing with here. You might need to reevaluate and have a very honest, objective look on your weekly training schedule and see, what you're actually able to do as opposed to what you think you can do or think you want to do. So, I would rather have a client be brutally honest with me and tell me that, I only have 2 days a week to train, as opposed to somebody who will tell me that they have 4 days a week to train, but they end up constantly missing workouts, right? Because listen, if you're strength training properly, right? Proper strength training is very, very time efficient. Meaning you don't need to train a whole lot in order to get massive results if you're properly strength trained. It's very time efficient. So even if you have relatively little amount of time to dedicate to training, you can still make fantastic progress. So, if you only have 2 days to dedicate to training, you can make phenomenal progress training only twice per week. Some of the greatest lifters in the world, some of the strongest men to ever walk the face of the earth, only train twice per week. People like, Mark Chalet, Hugh Cassidy, Dave Jacoby, Kenny Fantana, like some big names in old school powerlifting, who are some of the strongest men to ever live, trained once per week, or trained only twice per week. Some only trained once per week, and they were champion lifters. Again, some of the strongest men to walk the earth. So you can make phenomenal progress, training twice per week, or even once per week for some people who are really, really time limited. Now, with that being said, there are certain advantages to having more time to train, primarily because it opens up more options in terms of programming. But the reality is, you can make phenomenal progress training, relatively infrequently, twice per week, let's say. You can make phenomenal progress doing that. And again, I would rather you be super honest and say that, I only have 2 days a week to train, and you are consistent with that and you make every single one of those workouts, rather than saying or lying to yourself, saying that you can train 4 days a week, but at the end of the day you end up just constantly missing workouts. You'll make a lot more progress consistently training twice per week and having programming and programming accordingly than attempting to train more times per week and setting yourself up with that type of programming, but constantly missing workouts. So that's one aspect. The next front that you can discuss this on is your training motivation and enjoyment. You say here that you find it tough to get back into the routine after you've missed time off of training. Well, kind of going back to what I previously said about programming, scheduling, and frequency. If you constantly miss workouts, that's going to be very demotivating, right? If you're constantly missing workouts, you're going to quickly lose motivation because you're just missing workouts. You feel like that you're kind of dumping that on yourself, feeling like you're not adhering to your programming, which to a certain extent is true. So that can be really demotivating. But at the end of the day, your training should be motivating and enjoyable. You should enjoy your training, and even if you had to take a time off, whether that was forced time off or planned time off, you should be motivated and kind of itching to get back into it. So I would ask you is, do you enjoy your training? If not, there's a problem with that. There's different areas on why that might be and why you don't enjoy your programming. I don't have enough information to dive into that specifically for you. But needless to say, you should enjoy and be motivated by your training, right? You should not just train through just pure raw discipline. I know that there are people out there like Jocko and Goggins who just preach pure self-discipline. Don't be a pussy, just get in there and do it. But at the end of the day, that's just simply not sustainable. You can only stick with something just through pure raw discipline for so long. Some people can go on that longer than others, but at some point you're going to stop doing it because just raw self-discipline is not sustainable for the long run. You have to enjoy doing it and have to be motivated by doing it. For example, about a year ago, in terms of like my personal experience, about a year ago to this exact date, in fact, I decided to take 2 months off of training. Up to that point, I had been training for 6 years, really hard. Took no time off, no planned time off. I obviously had time off, forced time off when I got like sick or something. I just wasn't able to train. But up to that point, I've been training for like 6 years, really hard, no planned time off. And I was just burnt out, right? I was not motivated to train. I was not enjoying training. I was doing all sorts of different things with my programming to see if I could find something that I enjoyed doing or motivated me, and it just wasn't working out. And I knew what I had to do, and that's I had to take some time off. So at that point, I decided I'm going to take a month off of training. After a month, I was kind of itching to get back into it. I missed it, but even after a month, I decided I'm going to take another month off. And Thanksgiving week was just happened to be basically 2 months after. Thanksgiving week will be the time that I will get back into it. And after that 2 months, I was really itching to get back into it. I really, really missed it, and I was remotivated to get back in there. And some people will go, "Oh my God, 2 months off of training. I'm going to lose all my gains or whatnot." Again, if you're properly strength training, strength is very slow to lose, meaning you don't lose your strength um, very fast because it's a very expensive thing for your body to build up. So your body's not very quick to just offload it. But I got back in there after 2 months off. I was super motivated, I enjoyed training again because I just needed that physical and mental time off. And, I got back in there. And like I said, 12 weeks later, I was hitting PRs, brand new PRs. So, not only was that reset good for me, but, I didn't really lose very much strength. And in fact, 12 weeks later, I was hitting PRs. So sometimes planned time off is very, very beneficial. A lot of times with my clients, I will plan them time off, even if they don't really feel it's necessary or they don't feel like they want to take the time off. A lot of times after like a 12-week cycle, I would tell them, hey, after that cycle, hey, just take a week off. Even if you don't feel like you need it, just take a week off. It'll be good for you for the physical and mental break. Just have that nice week off. We don't have to worry about training. And after that week, you're going to be really motivated and to get back in there. You're going to be itching to get back in there, and so forth. So again, there are different ways to approach this, but you should enjoy your training, and sometimes that does mean taking planned time off of it. But in your case, again, I would take a hard objective look and ask yourself, do you really enjoy this? If not, you might need to look into doing something different that actually motivates you to get into the gym and actually do it, even after time off, whether that's forced time off or planned time off, where you actually miss doing it. Because it sounds like to me that you actually enjoy not doing it, right? After that forced time off, you're not really motivated to get back in there because, let's be honest, you don't really enjoy doing it. You're doing it more or less via pure raw discipline and as almost like a medicine. You just kind of take it and do it because you have to. Now, I'm not saying that there's not going to be days where you don't want to do it. I mean, certainly, even though I really enjoy training, obviously, there are days, and obviously with my clients, there are days I don't feel like training. There's a certain days where I'm like, I kind of don't feel like doing this, but I go in there and I do it anyways, just because, I know I need to do it. I know it's good for me, and I know I should do it. There are certainly days where you kind of default to self-discipline to get in there, but that should be certainly the minority. Most days you should be willing and able and motivated to go in there and do it. And then finally, one other point, kind of running along with this question, but one other point is I would consider becoming accountable to somebody else other than yourself, whether that's a coach or maybe even a training partner. One of the biggest values I bring as a coach is accountability, because my clients are no longer just accountable to themselves, right? Now they have a coach, they're paying for a coach, and me in this instance, they know that they're accountable to me. So if they miss a workout, particularly if they're just being lazy or whatever, now they don't have to just sell that to themselves. They now have to come and tell me, hey, I missed a workout, because they know that I'm expecting to see their videos, to upload their comments, upload how that workout went, etc., etc. But now they have to tell me that they missed their workout, and they have to explain to me why they missed it, come up with some sort of excuse. At the end of the day, it provides accountability, right? So it's a lot harder to not only sell yourself that you missed a workout, but sell me or their other coach that they missed their workout. So I bring a large bit of accountability. A training partner can do the same thing. If you have a training partner that trains with you every single workout, And if you're feeling lazy one day and you you don't want to do it, now you have to text them and be like, I don't feel like coming in today, and they'll kind of rip you a new asshole for it. Again, it's really good for accountability. And I have a very, very high completed workout. I'll go on to my thing here. Let's see here. So for all my clients, my 90-day average in terms of workouts completed is 99%, right? So for all my clients, for a 3-month period, they complete 99% of their workouts, which is a phenomenal compliance rate, right? So, that's one of the big advantages to having a coach or even someone like a training partner is accountability. So, that's something else I would suggest. There are other factors I could certainly discuss here, but, I'm already running really long with this question. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks again, Stephen, for the great question. All right, so my next question comes from Super Shooter X. Can you post some kind of easy to follow nutrition guide for the average man? This is more of a request than a question. But yes, Super Shooter, I do plan on doing a lot more nutrition content, particularly on my YouTube channel. So look out for that. I'll be doing a lot more nutrition and releasing more nutrition content in the near future. So keep an eye out for that. But I will throw out some, really quick pointers here, tips and tricks, if you will, in terms of dieting and nutrition. Number one, avoid diet fads. There's no one diet to rule them all, so to speak. There's a lot of different diets out there. Keto, paleo, veganism, and all sorts of other diets. There's no one magic diet out there. People are always looking for this magic diet that's, somehow going to, make them, super lean or give them the physique that they want. There's no magic diet. Now, certainly there are certain diets that people will generally follow, that they find, works better for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, just understand there's no one magic diet that's going to, magically give you the physique in the body that you want. There's simply not the case. Also, avoid extreme diets. Diets that are super extreme. Things like veganism, where they eat nothing but plants and fruits, and they won't even eat like animal products like milk and eggs and stuff like that. Those diets tend to be not only extreme but unhealthy. Like veganism, for example, is not a healthy diet. Objectively, it's not a healthy diet. This has been proven over and over again. Just look at your average vegan. He looks like he has the physique of somebody who was just liberated from Dachau. They're not healthy. Their bones are brittle. You fart in the wrong direction, you might break their femur. Things like that. Veganism is an extreme diet, and it's objectively not a healthy diet. And there's other diets on the other end of the spectrum too that simply are generally not healthy. So again, avoid extreme diets and avoid falling into the trap of trying to find this magic diet. They simply don't exist. Another pointer here is I would highly suggest that you diet slow. Whether you are looking to gain weight or lose weight, your weight manipulation should be relatively slow. Dieting is a slow process. Again, whether you're looking to gain weight or lose weight. Avoid crash diets and avoid extreme weight gain. Neither of those tends to end well. A good guideline here is to look to whether you're looking to lose weight or gain weight. Look to manipulate your weight 1 pound a week. If you're a bigger guy looking to lose weight, you're like, deep in the 200s or 300 pounds, you might look to maybe lose 2 pounds a week. But generally speaking, look to lose or gain about 1 pound a week. Take your weight manipulation slow. Dieting is a long-term process. Like strength training, it's a long-term process. And you should not look to do it really, really, really fast. In terms of weight loss, if you diet real fast, do a crash diet, number one, those tend to not work for very long, simply because your body works to adapt to that really quickly. Um, but but you tend to gain that weight back in terms of like weight loss. So the more you start eating more rationally, you're going to end up gaining a lot of that weight back. So it's just not sustainable. In terms of weight gain, if you gain a lot of weight real quickly, a lot of that's not going to be good weight in terms of like it's you're going to gain a lot more fat mass than you would if you were gaining weight slowly. All weight gain, you're going to gain a certain percentage of like fat mass in terms of muscle mass gained. But if you know take an extreme approach and you gain a whole lot of weight real fast, you're going to gain probably a lot more fat mass than you're probably willing to accept. So again, take your weight manipulation, take your dieting slow, whether that's weight loss or weight gain. Another pointer, understand that there's no such thing as bad foods, just bad eating habits. People want to dive into this idea that there's, unhealthy foods and healthy foods. And that's kind of an unhealthy relationship to have with food. Again, there's no such thing as bad foods, just bad relationships with food and bad eating habits. For example, people would say that cake is an unhealthy food. Well, not really. Like if you have cake, during holidays and special occasions like birthday parties, that's not unhealthy. You're not going to get fat from that. But at the other end of the spectrum, if you eat cake 3 times a day, that's an unhealthy relationship with that food. Same thing, like, talking about extreme diets, veganism, fruits and vegetables, most people would consider to be healthy food. But if that is all you eat, that's an unhealthy relationship with that food. Again, going back to like those extreme diets like veganism. So again, understand there's no such thing as unhealthy food, just unhealthy eating habits, unhealthy relationships with particular foods. Okay. And then finally, one other point: make sure you're properly strength training. Nutrition and physique definitely is a major. The biggest thing is what you do in the kitchen there. But proper strength training is very important in terms of like, weight loss and getting kind of the physique that you want. For example, if you take a guy who's like maybe 5'11", he's kind of a fluffy 195, but he's not strength training, and he wants to lose weight because he's, again, he's like a fluffy 195. If he's not strength training and let's say he loses 30 pounds, so he drops himself down to 165, he will probably kind of maintain that skinny fat look, simply because he's not strength training. Because how should I say this? Fat storage, your body fat is very, very valuable to your body, right? It's kind of like its savings account, right? Your body isn't necessarily quick to want to burn that off. Because again, it's like its savings account. It's for emergencies, if you will. So if you don't give your body a reason to maintain its muscle mass, i.e., proper strength training, it will likely burn muscle mass storage or muscle mass as opposed to fat mass a lot of times if there's no reason to maintain that muscle mass, i.e., you're not providing your body an environment in which it needs to maintain that muscle mass, proper strength training, that being proper strength training. So what you'll see is a lot of people who, again, they have, they're like fluffy at a heavier weight, but they're not training. They'll cut down their body weight, but they would maintain that skinny fat look because, again, there's no reason for their body to maintain that muscle mass. So it'll kind of preferentially burn off muscle mass as opposed to fat mass because there's no reason for your body to maintain that muscle mass, that extra muscle mass. So yeah, make sure you're properly strength training. proper training and proper nutrition go hand in hand, and you can't really have one without the other. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. But again, I do plan on doing more specific nutrition videos and content in the future, so be sure to look out for that. Okay, the next question is from Dustin, who is one of my clients. He says, or he asks, as an older lifter, 49 years old, he's going to be 50 in December, by the way, so happy early birthday, Dustin. As an older lifter, 49 years old, I'd love to hear your opinion on how strong is strong enough and how to balance gaining strength while minimizing injury risk. Again, phenomenal question. Thanks so much for the question, Dustin. So first off, let me just say this: strength training is a very, very safe activity, even at like higher intensities. It is, as opposed to other activities or other sports like soccer and basketball and stuff like that. It is a very, very, very safe training modality, even as opposed to things like running. Strength training, proper barbell-based strength training, is very safe. Even as opposed to things like running. Extremely safe. Even if you're training real hard and you're hitting really heavy weights, like heavy singles and stuff like that, your injury risk is relatively low. Now, does your injury potential go up a little bit? The stronger you get and the higher intensities that you're working with, particularly if you're doing like really heavy singles, a little bit, but again, not very much. It's just a generally safe activity. And you can get hurt, doing, lighter weights too. Like all my personal injuries in the gym, I've never had any like serious injuries. I've pulled muscles and stuff like that. But, all my little injuries that I've had in gym have always been actually at lighter weights. Like the worst little injury that I had in the gym was actually when I first started training. Is I actually tore both my adductors on both sides, warming up with an empty bar. Right, just one of those like freak things. It wasn't like a serious tear where I had surgery. It was just like a little muscle tear. It sucked for a few weeks. It really sucked for a few weeks. Abductor tear sucked. But I did that warming up on an empty bar. I think it was my second warm-up set with an empty bar. Right. So things can happen. There's always a risk to training, and it's just something you have to accept. But again, it's very, very safe, and you probably have a higher injury risk walking around, tripping and falling than you do training. So with all physical activities, there's always going to be some sort of risk you're going to assume. But again, in terms of strength training, proper barbell-based strength training, your injury risk, certainly in terms of reward benefit, is very, very low. So yeah. In terms of training older people, though, the biggest factor you have to take in mind, not only for yourself but me as a coach, is recovery. Managing recovery for older people. When I say older people, I generally mean people typically over 50. Managing recovery is the most important thing because older people simply don't recover as well as younger people for a variety of reasons, for a variety of biological reasons, and other factors like, older people tend to not sleep as well. They tend to not eat as much. Their ability to absorb protein is not as efficient as younger people. Older people tend to have, more injuries just accumulated through life and stuff like that. But generally speaking, older people just don't recover as well and as fast as younger people do. So you really have to pay attention to managing recovery with older people. They don't recover particularly as well from volume training and high frequency training. It's really easy for for an older person or as a coach training older people to run them into the ground with training frequency and volume. Um, Now, personally, for me, I don't struggle with this as much, simply because my programming, whether it's for older people or younger people, I'm pretty old school in my training philosophies and training programming, so I am not as frequency and volume centric as a lot of my colleagues and other coaches are. Um, you know, so again, managing recovery is the biggest thing when it comes to training older people. You really have to make sure that they're recovering from the work and you're not, grinding them into the dirt, primarily with training frequency and volume. And, you asked, how strong is strong enough for like older people? Some general strength standards for like, primarily for men here. I'll just leave this at men. So for strength standards for older people, again, I kind of define that as primarily men over 50. I really would like them to hit a two times body weight deadlift, a 1.5 times body weight squat, a 1.25 times body weight bench press, and a 0.75 or a 3/4 body weight overhead press, standing overhead press. I think those are more than reasonable numbers for an older individual, older male to hit. And with proper training, most older guys should be able to hit those numbers. And if you're able to hit those numbers as an older guy, you're more than strong enough to deal with really anything that's going to come your way, anything in your normal every day-to-day life. If you're a real old guy, like, you're 90 years old, you might not be able to hit those numbers. But most older people, most older men should be able to hit those numbers. Those aren't outside of those are more than reasonable numbers to hit for an older individual. Thanks, Dustin. That was a great question. All right. Ron asks, Ron is actually another client of mine again. Thanks so much for the question, Ron. As for 5 repetitions, the human body seems to like the number 5 or its derivatives. 5 senses, 5 fingers and toes, 10 major organs, etc. Does the number 5 have some sort of major significance to the human body? And is it sorry, I'm misreading it. And is that why we use the 5 rep set? And is that where Starting Strength got it from? A great question, Ron. The 5 rep set, why we use it, is a very common question that I get. I've never thought about it that way in terms of it's just the human body, like the number 5, in terms of 5 fingers, 5 toes, 5 senses, stuff like that. I don't think it's necessarily that mystic and deep or whatever, but there is a reason why we focus on the 5 rep set and why the 5 rep set is always like a foundation to our programming. And that is because the 5 rep set has just proven time and time again to be the most effective rep range for building just general strength and muscle mass. And that's because it is generally the best in between your super maximal low rep range training, so like your triples, doubles, and singles, and your really high volume or higher volume training, like your sets of 8, sets of 10, and certainly like your higher rep ranges than that. And as a result, you mentioned Starting Strength here. Starting Strength, didn't come up with this. Mark Rippetoe, the author, the founding of Starting Strength, he just didn't pull the 5 rep set out of his ass. He got this from all the guys who came before him. All the old, like if you ask any of the old school powerlifters, people like Hugh Cassidy, Kirk Kowalski, Ed Cohn, Marty Gallagher, who not only was a really good lifter in his own right, but a phenomenal coach who coached many of these lifters. they will all tell you the same thing, that the 5 rep set is the base for your strength, is the most like if you want to build a good strength foundation, you should focus on the 5 rep set. This doesn't mean that we don't use any other sets. I mean, we're going to use a lot of other sets. You know, you've been with me for only a few months now, so you're still running a novice programming where you're only doing 5 sets of 5, because again, it's the foundation, so we're going to focus on that for a while. But once you enter post-novice program, we're going to do a lot of other different rep ranges, triples, doubles, singles, even sets of 8, maybe even sets of 10. But no matter what, the 5 rep set will always be the foundation to our programming, and that's what we're going to focus on the most, for good reason, because time and time again has just been proven to be the most effective rep range for just general strength and conditioning, and it's a really good leaping board to other stuff. Like, if you make PRs on your 5 rep set, there's a really good likelihood that you're going to be able to make PRs on your triples, doubles, singles, and even like higher rep sets too, like your 8. It's just a really good jumping board to those. So that's why we use the 5 rep set as our foundation to our programming, and that's why we do more 5s than we necessarily do anything else. Again, not to say that there's not other really effective rep ranges, but again, time and time again, and people who have been just absolute giants within the industry and some of the strongest men on the earth, again, just have proven that the 5 rep set has just been the most effective rep range for building strength. So that's why we use it. So the next question is also actually from Ron. He submitted 2. I've been doing bodybuilding for most of my life, but since transitioning to more strength-focused training, I've noticed that my muscle structure is different. My muscles are smaller but stronger. Is this more efficient for the body? So yeah, there is definitely a difference in physique when it comes to, strength athletes, people who are primarily focused on, absolute strength, as opposed to people who focus on bodybuilding. Generally speaking, these are 2 very different training methodologies. Bodybuilding, classic bodybuilding tends to be very, very volume focused. The reason for this is that, bodybuilding as a sport is devoid of performance outside of just getting up on stage and, performing the pose as well. It's devoid of performance. Bodybuilding, the only thing that matters is how you look, and that's it. It's devoid of performance. Strength training, and, if you want to compare it to another sport, powerlifting, is very different. It's a performance-based sport, right? You become a good powerlifter and you win by performance, by lifting more weight than your competition. So the training is very, very different. So bodybuilders primarily focus on really high volume training and more accessory work than powerlifters do, for a lot of different reasons, but one of the big reasons is bodybuilders pursue a pump, meaning they're looking to really pump the muscle up, and they really want to continue and constantly stretch that muscle and the fascia that surrounds the muscle to loosen up the muscle. So that way when they flex, the muscle can get real big. The fascia around the muscle is like the skin around of a sausage, if you will. So they want to constantly stretch that thing and get it loose. So that way when they flex that muscle, or contract, technically it's contracting is a more correct term. That muscle, that fascia is looser and allows that muscle to get real big. So what you will see with like bodybuilders is, like someone like Arnold, right? They have a pretty impressive physique just walking around, right? But when they flex, that's when they really get big, right? Arnold, he's a big guy, definitely just just him being the way he is, not flexing. But, you know, he's not necessarily super, super impressive. But the moment he like gets up on stage and like flexes, he just blows up. It's like a cobra almost. You know, cobra, you know, doesn't look terribly big, but the moment pushes its wings out, it looks real big. It's kind of like a puffer fish almost too, right? That's kind of the point of bodybuilding. It definitely has a different physique. Now, if you look at people like really high level powerlifters, people like Kirk Kowalski, Ed Cohn, Dave Jacoby, those guys are just monsters walking around. They're really, really big. Just they have a lot more muscle density. So, meaning, you know, their muscles are just denser and stronger. And this is just due to the difference of training because there are generally speaking, a lot lower volume training, a lot lower frequency, and they're focusing on high end strength output. That's maximal strength output. They're truly strength athletes, so they just have a different physique. They're they're real big, really thick, but at the same time, if you ask them to flex, they don't really change very much. Like if you watch Ed Cohn or Kirk Kowalski flex, they're not going to blow up like a bodybuilder would because again, there's just a difference in training. Now going back to like, is this more efficient for the body? Well, again, strength training is it's performance based, right? It's not really aesthetics based. Not to say we don't care about aesthetics, but we care far more about performance than we do about aesthetics. Again, bodybuilding, it doesn't matter. It's not performance based. The only thing that matters is how you look. So whether you're curling 10-pound dumbbells in the gym, it doesn't matter unless as long as you look good and look big, and look big and whatever, look like a bodybuilder, your performance doesn't matter. That's the exact opposite in terms of like strength training. Performance matters, and generally speaking, yes, strength training is just a much more efficient use of your time. It's more functional, if you will, simply because it's performance based. Again, not to say we don't care about aesthetics, but as far as me and my how I coach and stuff like that, I care far more about getting you strong than I care about specifically how big your bicep is. I care about getting you strong. I care much more about your performance than I care about your aesthetics. So yeah, strength training is certainly much more efficient in terms of just building general strength and conditioning than bodybuilding is. All right, and finally, we have one other question. This will be a short question, luckily, because this is definitely going long. And Devin asks, "What do you think are reasonable strength goals that the average person should pursue?" Yeah, great question. I get asked this a lot. I'm going to talk about just your average person, younger person, so people who are under 50. What strength goals, what strength standards are generally reasonable, and that I want my clients to reach, or at least want them to pursue. For your average person. Again, average younger individual under 50. I have two different standards for both men and women, so I'll just go over this here. Men under 50, I would really like them to hit a 2.5 times body weight deadlift, a 2 times body weight squat, 1.5 times body weight bench press, and a body weight overhead press, standing overhead press. So for example, like your 200-pound male, this would be a 500-pound deadlift, 400-pound squat, a 300-pound bench press, and a 200-pound overhead press, standing overhead press. If you hit those numbers, you are definitely strong, and you're certainly strong enough for anything that life can throw at you. And those are more than reasonable enough numbers for your average, younger male to pursue. Again, younger being generally under 50. Those are reasonable numbers, certainly more than obtainable. And I think, like I said, I think those are just, really good strength standards to pursue. Again, if if you are able to do that, you are more than strong enough. You're definitely strong, and you're more than strong enough for life, for anything that life can throw at you. So yeah, those are like my general male standards I really like, my clients to pursue. As for women, again, women under 50, I would really like them to hit a double body weight deadlift, a 1.5 times body weight squat, a body weight bench press, and a 3/4 body weight overhead press. So for like so if you have like a female who is 130 pounds, that would be like 260-pound deadlift, right around a 200-pound squat, a 130-pound bench press, and right around like 100, maybe 105, depending on what the math comes out to, overhead press. Again, if you're a woman, those are really good strength standards to shoot for, particularly if you're under 50. More than reasonable enough numbers to hit. And again, if you hit those, you're certainly a strong woman, and you would be more than strong enough for anything that life can throw at you. So those are just good general strength standards to hit for both men and women. So those are all the questions I have for you guys. Those are all the questions I have to answer today, or that I can answer today. Again, I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question, but again, I plan on doing more of these in the near future. Thank you to everybody who sent me questions, and I look forward to doing more of these in the future. If you are interested in my services, my coaching services, be sure to check out my website, midgardstrength.com. If you're interested in coaching, I'd be more than happy to help you. Again, I'm Tyler Austin from Midgard Strength and Conditioning. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you under the bar.